Hello, true duelists. It's YGO Strat's Yu-Gi-Oh! Single Card History, where I'm going to be talking about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that just didn't. Today's card, quite possibly the best instant fusion target the game has ever seen, Elder Entity Norden. Elder Entity Norden was released in 2015 in the Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon Mega Tin, a promo card that was guaranteed in each tin as a super rare, and as of this video has had no reprints to date. For its time on the ban list, it was first limited on the April 2016 ban list, where it would stay for 3 formats, before eventually being banned on the June 2017 ban list, where as of this video it has stayed ever since. A level 4 water attribute fairy type fusion monster with 2000 attack and 2200 defense. Its fusion materials are any 2 Synchro or Xyz monsters, and its effect reads: when this card is special summoned, you can target one level 4 or lower monster in your graveyard, special summon it, but its effects are negated, also banish it when this card leaves the field. Norden, the fusion monster best known for its Xyz plays. Norden is a part of the Entity series of cards, an archetype that debuted as a Korean exclusive based on the H.P. Lovecraft lore, and is a series that gave us some interesting combinations of fusion, synchro, and Xyz monsters who could combo well with each other. A number of them have been very good, and a number of them have been banned for just how good they are. Norden is one of the latter, banned for its ability to be incredibly easily abused for Xyz summons essentially for free, because as is often the tradition for fusion monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's not so much about fusion summoning them traditionally, it's about using the easiest means to cheat them out that makes them good. And let me tell you, there is a damn easy way to cheat out Norden, a little card called Instant Fusion. Yes, for the low cost of 1000 life points, Instant Fusion will summon any level 5 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, treating it as a fusion summon and not negating its effects. This means you can just summon out Norden properly for 1000 life points and get to use its fantastic effect, which is to summon any level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard. The brain dead and often most effective play would be to summon any level 4 monster from your graveyard, which could then be overlaid into one of the game's countless generic rank 4 Xyz monsters for whatever sort of play it is you'd like to make. In the modern game, this might not seem too incredible, but once upon a time, the generic rank 4 toolbox was one of the strongest and most reliable series of cards in the game. Going first, Norden could get you a free extra piece of disruption on top of your end board, such as an Abyss Dweller for shutting off graveyard effects, Trap Tricks for Fleesia for an extra bit of monster disruption, or for a brief period before it was banned, a copy of Tornado Dragon just to disrupt the opponent's spell and trap plays. Or if you were going second, you could get a solid piece of removal such as Castel the Sky Blaster Musketeer, or Utopia to rank into Utopia the Lightning to get over a big beater the opponent has, or just any means to try and bait and negate from the opponent using something like number 106 Giant Hand. The only setup required was a monster already in the graveyard, which was not a hard thing to pull off if you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In any year after 2005. But it wasn't just Xyz monsters Norden could get out. By reviving a tuner, players could use Norden to get a free Synchro monster as well. Speaking personally, I can remember playing Ghost Ogre to disrupt the opponent on their turn as my hand trap of choice, then start my turn by using Instant Fusion to revive the Ghost Ogre to Synchro summon Black Rose Dragon and either break their board first thing or force a negate or disruption if they had one. That's a fairly easy and obvious one, but the number of hand traps in the game that double as tuners meant you could open a fair number of plays, from a level 5 Synchro by reviving an Effect Veiler, or by using Norden to revive a tuner and then Synchro summon a monster using that tuner and a different monster you've normal summoned, just using Norden as a monster reborn but with extra steps. It was known before we ever got Norden in the TCG that the card would be abused and warp the game somewhat, and it most certainly did. Seeing as Instant Fusion was at 3 the entire time Norden was legal, it was common for players to main deck 3 Instant Fusion and play 1 or 2 copies of Norden in the extra deck just to be able to use it multiple times over the course of the duel. In terms of competitive impact, it was damn near instant. This chart shows that Norden immediately started appearing in topping deck lists, with a brief fade in the summer of 2016, but that was because Pokemon Go had just been released and top players weren't playing as much Yu-Gi-Oh! In general because holy shit, dude, there's a Snorlax over there! seriously. Now, unlike some of the other cards I've covered, this isn't like Alistair the Invoker or Rescue Cat, who had defined roles in more specific decks throughout their history. Norden was just played in any deck piloted by a player who valued a free rank 4 or something of the like. Norden shows up in top deck lists for Nekroz decks as an easier access to rank 4 power plays for a Castell or Dweller like I mentioned, or especially for Nekroz to make a free copy of Daigusto Emerald to put those resources back in the deck. Shadal decks played it, Taller decks obviously played it, a Speedroid Nekroz deck played it, Zephyr Yang Zings topped with it, Pendulum Magicians played it, and best of all, Norden even saw play in Pepe, the T0 deck that was the final breaking of Pendulum decks in Master Rule 3, because even in a deck known for shitting out monsters turn after turn, making endless pluses for endless rank 4s and easy Ignister Prominence plays, a free rank 4 off Instant Fusion was still good enough to be played in a deck that was miles above everything else in the format. The remnants of Pepe after it got hit on the ban lists would continue to play Norden and Draco Pals, and even extra deck Monarchs sometimes played the card, just to solidify how good this thing was. From here on, it stays the same. If the deck has access to rank 4s, Norden is almost certainly in it. Instead, where I'll go from here is to mention a special trait Norden shared before it would be broken to the point of banning. You see, Norden's attribute was actually notable in being water. That meant it could be used to summon another level 4 water monster to be used to overlay into Bahamut Shark, which was notable for being able to summon the then newly released Totally Awesome, which meant depending on your deck, you could get an extra negate to accompany your rank 4 spam just from your standard Norden play. This was, in my heavily biased opinion, best abused in Mermail Atlanteans, a deck of all water monsters, and a then recently semi-limited Atlantean Dragoons, a monster that searches a sea serpent when detached from Bahamut to summon the toad. Summoning a negate and getting a search is hardly a bad play. The more infamous deck to abuse this, however, was Totally Heroes, which realistically was the best deck to do it. A Dark Law Turbo deck that played Tin Goldfish and Elemental Hero Bubbleman as the level 4 waters to make Bahamut, and a good opening hand, namely Tin Goldfish, Shadow Mist, Bubbleman, and Instant Fusion, it was possible to end on Dark Law, 2 Bahamuts, and 2 Toads. Now that's a nightmare. It's an easy 4-card combo, dude. Just open it every game. How hard can it be? Now, it wasn't common, but it was brutal to face when it happened. After this, good decks like ABC could use Norden for the standard rank 4, but really the final 72 hours of this card's time before being banned starts with the release of the Zodiac archetype in Raging Tempest in February of 2017. An archetype designed to break the already abusable Xyz mechanic, taking the entire point of the mechanic, the overlaying of 2 monsters to make a new one. Zodiac instead let you just vomit Xyz monsters onto the board, on top of any Zodiac monster for free, just ranking up from one monster into another. This meant any Zodiac monster could become any other Zodiac monster by searching with Broadbull, or could become a quick effect pop with Trident. And if the Zodiac player had access to Ratpier, a card that let the player detach a material to summon another copy of itself from deck, it meant that the rank 4 spam was reaching its tipping point. Free rats from the deck with a rat as material, and the means to make a number of Daigusto Emeralds to recycle said rats to keep making free rank 4s, as well as drawing more cards from the deck in the process. Now, initially this was abused through the same means that every other deck had been, with Instant Fusion. Pay 1,000, free rank 4, and another complaint thread on Reddit. By this point, it had been the case for 2 years. It was nothing new. But Zodiac would ultimately grow to do what no other deck had thought to do when it came to using Elder Entity Norden, fusion summoning it with the required materials. Because while there was a time during the early Zodiac format of debate of which variant was best, namely Pure Zodiac or True Draco Zodiac or Kaiju Zodiac, each of them would still be abusing Norden, but it wasn't until the community found and settled on Fusion Substitute Zodiac that Norden would be pushed to the point of no return. It really was the perfect storm of events. Zodiac already had plenty of means to get Xyz monsters on the field by turning any zoo into any Zodiac Xyz. There was the newly released Zodiac Chakanine, which could revive an Xyz monster from the grave, and Broadbull could grab Luna Light Black Sheep, which in turn could search out Fusion Substitute, which meant hard making Norden for another rank 4 was easy as could be, and often they would make an Emerald to recycle their rank 4 plays from the grave and then draw a new card. card. And then Fusion Substitute could put the limited Norden back into the extra deck to draw another card. And since neither Fusion Substitute nor Emerald are once per turn, it's very common for a full combo Substitute Zodiac, good god what is going on deck to draw an extra 2 to 4 cards when going first. And since, like I've mentioned too many times now, any zoo monster is any zoo monster in practice, it meant not only could Zodiac decks play a small but effective Zodiac core, they could also main deck hate as much as they liked, really, with a minimal loss to consistency. Cards like Ash Blossom, Dimensional Barrier, Dark Holes, whatever they wanted to break boards or stop plays, and as long as they saw a single zoo monster, they could draw a few extra cards to get some solid bits of disruption to end boards. This would ultimately be the end of Norden, and it was banned in June of 2017, a month before the release of Link Monsters and Master Rule 4, which was for the best, since even if Norden would take up an extra Monster Zone slot, it could bring back a monster and be a free Link 2 for every deck. And while admittedly a lot of decks would have loved this in early Master Rule 4, the best decks would have abused it to an absurd degree, I'm sure. And that was part of the great debate about Norden towards the end of its days. The fear of it breaking the game in 2015 had kind of dissolved, with it being so easy to abuse in every deck. Looking back, it almost reminds me of modern card debates at the time I'm making this video. Crystron Halqifibrax was similarly known to be far too generic and abusable for its own good, but by the time it was banned, it was argued that it helped a number of lower tier decks, that its ban might be a bigger hit to some rogue strategies than the top decks that were abusing it. Now, I disagree with that, but I'm just saying it's an argument I've seen. Norden was much of the same. Rogue players sometimes argued that Norden was needed for them to be able to try and break the boards the top decks were putting up. But as is always the case, what's generically good for rogue decks to be decent is more often than not broken for top decks to become insurmountable. I won't pretend to know definitively what the right call was, but I will say, even though my Mermail deck was worse for losing Norden, the game at large has felt better to play without it. Maybe that's too anecdotal for you, but I don't want to imagine the game with Norden buffing Tier 0 Spiral or whatever other extra FTKs could have been bolstered in 2018 by having Norden available. I personally have always wondered what the popular opinion on Norden would have been had it not been a guaranteed tin promo. Being an assured get in each of those Odd Eyes tins definitely helped players to be able to play the card at an affordable rate, as opposed to if it had been a secret rare and a core set, or even worse, a side set. I imagine had it been a more expensive card, then more players would have been very vocally against it. Broken but affordable means we all suffer, but broken and expensive means the sweat show at locals ruins your night. That's not really important, but I remember talking with friends about how expensive we thought Norden was certain to be, and our sense of welcome surprise when it wasn't. Also irrelevant, I can't believe this card has not had a reprint. Buy them up before that Time Wizard format, folks. Just get out there and consume. Overall, Norden is one of the best examples of the broken generic card from the last decade or so. A very abusable, and fittingly enough for its water attribute, a very splashable monster that opened up a plethora of plays in its time. From setting up boards to helping to break them, it remains a prime example to me that while good generic cards can be fun, sometimes they can be a bit too much, especially when it comes to helping abuse an already abused series of cards like the Rank 4 toolbox. I do not see this card coming back anytime soon, and if it does, super polymerization had better be dead and buried by that point. And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Elder Entity Norden. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats, so you too can become a true duelist.